Brenda said like you've been in leadership positions on campus and actually can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah. So I'm in a pre-medical fraternity on campus, and in that we each are given a leadership position in some form. So I'm like on a specific committee in there, and then I also made a club on campus last year. Yeah. And I'm president of that still. I'm in NAMI. I don't know. I'm in orchestra. I like orchestra. Yeah.
Any other questions? Scott?
What's the mirror have?
Take your time.
Take your time.
What makes you want to be part of the field sport? Like, what interests you about the position?
So Brenda reached out to me over the summer about it, and I hadn't heard of it before, and I think it's really great that like we as students can all just like, if something of such a matter would come up, we can put our like thoughts aside and just be impartial about something. Because like I do know some people on SGA, but like I know where like the line stands between the facts and making sure that your own experiences don't like interact with that. But yeah, I've always wanted to be on a position like this. I was in SGA as a FY freshman year, but since then I like wanted to make my club and stuff, so like I couldn't really do that as much, but I like to do this my last year.
I have a question if you don't mind. So as a member of the appeals board, you'll be delineating on like people within SGA. Members of the appeals board do not have the option to abstain, even for personal reasons. So could you kind of affirm your ability to not be biased in these situations where someone you may know from SGA kind of comes forward to the appeals board? If that makes sense.
Just to confirm that I won't be biased. Yeah, I won't be biased. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. With that being said, we're going to move into a period of discussion. During discussion, only Finnace board representatives and ex officio members can kind of talk. So you won't be allowed to talk during this time frame. Nobody discussing. But if you hear something that feels like out of place, or you want to address something that you think is inferred that you think you can misconstrue, to give time afterwards, just like that.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we're going to enter a period of discussion. I'd like to start.
Wait, so nominating committee found people for appeals board?
Yes.
And Michael, y'all nominated. Yeah. So what interests you?
I wasn't there for that meeting, unfortunately. I had car issues, but I was there for the next nominee. But I was unfortunately there for the appeals board's nominee, so I cannot give any further information on that.
I was there. And Sharon was a good candidate to be on the appeals board. She definitely seems like she definitely wouldn't be biased and would be able to separate like any like I guess relationship or like anything like familiarity with anyone and like the rules and the guiding box. So and she's also very involved on campus, which I guess is something that's really valued to me, someone who I guess can reach out to his as and can reach other students, but isn't like not through SGA.
Scott.
Why did you reach out to Sharon specifically?
So, like I mentioned, it was really like matching those two criteria of someone who's really involved. And I knew Sharon was through IDE and through like her club and all of those things, but also maintained that distance from SGA. So, like when I thought of those two things, Sharon came to mind right away.
Any other points of discussion?
How many candidates are there?
Two candidates. So SGA has put two people on the appeals board. The second one will be coming in just about an hour. Scott.
How many times did appeals board have to meet last year?
One.
So the year before last, I'll start with that, they did not convene at all. And then last year they met once for 10 minutes.
And you know that the position is unstable. Okay.
Any other discussion points? I'd like to move previous question and debate. All in favor? All right. Are there any motions on the floor for JL?
Move to approve JL 04-19, squad.
Second.
Anyone like to register an abstention at this time? Cool. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? 9 for, 0 against, 0 abstaining, 0 not present. The motion passes. Congratulations.
Yeah, we get to swear in.
It's been so long for this with the call.
So you're just gonna go upstairs and just everybody what the says. That's it.
Stand right there. Right from the pizza. That's right. All right, raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Sharon Tressa,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of Appeals Board Member
the office of Appeals Board Member
of the UMBC Student Government Association
of the UMBC Student Government Association,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the best of my ability
promote and defend
promote and defend
the interests and well-being
the interests and well-being
of UMBC's undergraduate population.
of UMBC's undergraduate population.
Congratulations. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Up next, I believe we have a hospital. Living Water Christian Fellowship. Is anyone here? Is that word? Would you guys like to look at this request and vote on it, or do you want to table it to see if they show up?
They respond.
Yeah, I don't believe they respond.
I'll have to
Unless
look
there's a
at it.
reason that we can't pass it, like all legislation,
Yeah.
Wait, what?
If they were to come, they would come at 5:45, so it's like, you could probably give them that.
This is open to the
I think since there's another extra campus now, that was not.
Yep. 110%. Alright, let me be in the full group and then I'll get to it back.
Alright, so this is the last request for Christian Living Fellowship. They are requesting shirts for $11.97 each. They're planning on charging the $197, so it'll even out to $10 per item, but I believe they did request more than 300, so just lower that down to the minimum of what they requested. This is their design.
Does that have UMBC?
Yep, little yellow circle.
It's on there.
Alright, I'd like to open up discussion. I have no problem with it, except for bringing it down to 300.
Yeah, that seems fine.
How many shirts?
So they requested more than 30, but we'll only get them 300.
Oh, wait a minute. They used 2 shirts like that club last week. Is that like approved? Everything?
2 shirts, yeah. I talked to David since then.
Okay.
They're approved.
Oops. approve both the Living Water Christian Fellowship's Fall 2019 Secondary Ad hoc Allocation System request for the amount of $300. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve FPL 1130-19 fund.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? 8-4, 0 against. Motion passes. Booking new additions. What is one?
$300. What is it? Is that right?
Yeah. Alright, moving on to FPL 114, which is the stilettos. We have members of stilettos here, correct? So they have put in a Sahas request for t-shirts. Theirs is number 21. I'm gonna move all these out of the review station. There we go. So the request is $100 for t-shirts, 15 shirts, $10 each. Their members will cover the rest of them. But since they were here, you guys are free to speak up on your request. You have about 3 minutes to kind of just give details, why you want the shirts, how you can cost, all that kind of stuff. So, go ahead.
My name is Anna. I'm president of the Stilettos and CPAC. She's our treasurer. So we usually get t-shirts every year. It helps because we usually, like it says here, we usually go off campus to perform at other colleges, so it helps us look more cohesive when we perform. So we do find it a necessity for our group. And unfortunately, we didn't get any last year because we were denied funding, so it kind of depleted our whole account because we had to spend $1,000 on hosting our semester concert. So we're requesting money for t-shirts so we can perform off campus.
All right. Are there any questions for the org at this time?
Yeah.
Can anybody be a member of your group or are there auditions?
There are auditions.
So they're a limited funding organization.
I don't think that affects t-shirts then.
Yes.
Hasn't been passed, but decision of the board. Any other questions, Justin?
Oh,
Just, all right. No one has any other questions. We're going to go ahead and move into a period of discussion. During this time frame, only finance representatives can talk to each other and exhibition members. But again, if you hear something that you feel is like out of place or you feel like you've misconstrued the board or something, you'll be given an opportunity at the end to kind of address any of those concerns. All right. With that, I'd like to move into a period of discussion. Would anyone like to start?
Looks like it's 15 shirts. Up there it says 150.
Yep.
Alright. Shirts. Look cool and good.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with this request. I understand that they're limited funding, but I don't see how limited funding really impacts t-shirts in this situation. So I'm for moving forward with the request.
Just a point of process for all t-shirt requests now. The pot's no longer reserved for marketing and merchandise since we're past the budget submission deadline. So this is all Sahas itself. It's not reserved for marketing and merchandise.
Just out of curiosity, question, please.
We have a bill on market merchandise fund.
and just say everything.
So just add that those together. Candace?
I do think that being a limited funding organization should impact whether or not a student is given t-shirts because not every student can get the shirt because not every student can be a member. And limited funding organizations are my understanding is that they are allowed to get funding if what they're being funded for is open to all students. And if these t-shirts are for members, membership is not open to all students, therefore t-shirts are not open to all students. That is how I would interpret it, but it is a vote for the board.
I think that since even that though membership is limited, most clubs only give out t-shirts to members. So
Yeah, but anybody can be a member.
yeah, but not everybody's a member of every club and doesn't get t-shirts. So I see
I
kind of
think what Candace is saying, like, anyone can be a member as long as they like attend the meetings and like meet their friends.
Everybody has the opportunity to be a
Yeah.
member. There's no criteria around like, you're a member, you're not a member, like, where there's no like audition, right, to be a member. If I wanted to be a member of VSA, I could be a member of VSA. I don't have to audition to be a member of VSA. There's no gatekeeping there. But
So
for
kind of
individ-
similar to like, if we weren't gonna give t-shirts to like Greek life or something.
Yeah, those are limited funding groups.
Okay.
If a Greek organization came in here and asked you to fund their t-shirts, would you?
With this precedent, we would have to set something for everybody to consider. What do you guys think?
Wait, was dog collar comedy limited?
No.
Are they not?
So I don't believe we funded any limited things.
Well, I just know for last meeting, we funded, environmental task force, wasn't it? And I think to get a shirt, you had to attend 2 cleanups. So, I mean, that's not a requirement for membership.
You have to attend 2 meetings. But they were using the shirts for the cleanup. So when they went to clean up, they would wear the shirts to like showcase UMBC.
I thought it was 2 cleanups as well.
No, you just needed 2 meetings. But that also did include cleanups.
I mean, that's not a
But how
criteria to
is
be a
that
member of that
similar?
board, but like, it's a requirement to get the shirt. I mean, it's like similar premises, but it's not the exact same thing.
I think the 2 meeting thing though is a little bit different from like auditioning for a club.
Right, because I have control over whether or not I attend to meetings.
Yeah,
I have
that's correct,
personal
yeah.
control over that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have personal control whether or not I give them to a Greek or not.
Should we ask the sister?
Of my 2 sons.
Yeah, we can open it back to discussion. If you guys want to ask the club any questions regarding their limited funding status, or anything related to this.
Here's a question for me.
No, this was an open request to the board. If anyone had any questions for the club. But I can see where both points stand. Yes.
Sorry, have you guys been funded, for t-shirts in the past?
Yeah, almost every semester besides the last one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Do people who are in your club have to pay dues?
No.
So when people audition, who decides if they make the team? Is it the board or your supervisor?
The whole group.
Yeah, it's everyone that they usually vote on. But it's a longer process. It's like, they come in and there's an audition process and then a callback process. And it's usually based on like technical, like half of it's singing ability, half of it's like music, technical knowledge.
don't know if you have this information off the top of your head, but on average, how many people audition and how many people tend to get in?
Probably 52, probably 50 most.
Yeah, 50 max. This year, I feel like we maybe had 30 people audition, and we had 10 people get in.
We have to get the funding for every year, so.
Not last year.
Was it 50?
Last year, we didn't request it.
I think that.
So if I went to your audition and I suck at singing and everything, so if I lose it, right? And then I ask you for a t-shirt, will I get a t-shirt just for pride, for my purposes?
Oh,
If
sorry,
student?
could you repeat the question?
Sure, so if I went to your audition and I lost the audition, right? Because, I suck at singing personally, that's just my first opinion. If I ask you for a t-shirt just because I love your club and I want to represent, like, I love the UMBC logo in there, for example, just the way it's represented, will I get a t-shirt or no?
If we had an extra t-shirt and someone requested one, I couldn't see us saying no. It's just usually, we always have auditions at the very beginning of the semester, so we usually have no extra t-shirts on hand because we only order what we need. Like the t-shirts we're currently requesting are identical to the ones me and Kat received like 2 years ago, the last time we got t-shirts. That way we don't need to order a whole bunch of extra or get a new design. We just get the same design each year. So we only have to get what we need.
Thank you.
And is this Stilettos a co-ed group or just?
It's just female identifying.
Any other questions for the board, or do we want to move back to discussion? Yes. Alright, so we're going to shift back to discussion. Again,
makes it limited funding too, so, just another aspect of the limited funding.
Things that make organizations limited funding is restriction of membership, and if that can be by GPA, by restricting men or women, identifying auditions. Am I gonna say anything? Dues. Thank you. And like Courtney said, if it's like a belief system, like a religious group, then they only allow people without religion.
Anything that if restricts a member of UMBC from being, like, if the club theoretically could not have everyone from UMBC be a member, then it's limited. So what is everyone's kind of, if you don't mind, just quickly going their current thoughts on whether or not funding should occur or not, or if there should be a cut? So I'm gonna let start. I'm still okay with the fully funding because we've done it in the past, and it's just for merchandise and marketing for T-shirts. Like, I think that one thing too is like if they had extras, they would be willing to give them out. So it's not incredibly exclusive, but at the same time, I can see the other side. Scott might be one of them. So Scott,
I think they're kind of set apart because they don't have dues. They'll probably use the T-shirts and the events that we're going to fund probably later, where they present to everybody, and we usually fund their showcase, or whatever the correct word is for it. So I'd be okay, but I don't. Since they are limited funding, I think it could be a little bit dangerous in giving funds that are not available to anybody. If that makes sense. I don't want all our money to go to exclusive events that people can attend, because it's trying to promote a vibrant campus life for youth.
How much is in the house spot?
currently we have 15,000.
I'm calculating right now.
We've used just about 2,500 out of the pot, and the total amount available was about 18,000.
Can you repeat how much you said you
We've used about 2,500, but they're doing the math. So we have $15,867 left in the house pot for the fall semester.
I can understand the reasons of, I guess, exclusivity and being limited funding, but I don't see a problem with limited funding. Yeah, so they said like they keep the same designs every year, so I feel like if they wanted like t-shirts and they would just roll over to like the next semester, I feel like it's okay.
I feel that if they've had funding in the past, I don't see an issue with it this semester compared to last semester.
My concern was if other people were posting for t-shirts who probably were denied audition if they were able to get their hands on it. And if that's, I mean, they've expressed a willingness to provide some extra features to that, so I personally don't see that much of, like, I don't have that reservations against that, so I'll be in favor of it.
If I can interject, can you guys speak up more over than I have to?
Sure, you want me to repeat myself?
Sure.
Okay, so I said that my biggest concern was that if someone went to audition and they got denied, like the audition thing, then if they went and asked them for, t-shirt, if they would be willing to give them a t-shirt or not, and the club did express that they would be willing to if they had extra t-shirts. So personally, I don't have that big of a reservation against that. I mean, I do understand that they have been funded in the past, so maybe keeping that consistent, especially if we have money for that, I think would be a good idea.
We're going to go to Nick first.
But I guess we're not funding extra t-shirts. So
if it were like someone drops out and quits, and then someone comes along and says, "Hey, can I get a shirt?" Like that would be their only opportunity.
but I guess it's more so that the shirts and the jeans should be funded as like come back from the
Scott.
Well, it's more like for they only buy shirts for their current membership. The thing is that their current membership is exclusive. So I think that was Candace's point in that. So it's not like somebody's gonna walk in and be like, yo, can I get a shirt? Because they're not gonna have extras, presumably.
Yes.
I mean, I think everyone is sort of like saying like, oh, like right now, like it was funded in the past and we like do have like the money for it, so like we should go ahead and sort of do it. But I mean, the entire thing about it being exclusive and it opened the door for other clubs, like the entire concept, like I know that you said it's different from Greek life because there's no dues and so it's not as extreme of a limited funding for it. I would probably say that moving forward we should probably start, even though past boards have funded things of this nature, we should probably start sort of sticking to what we say in terms of the fact that we don't fund things that are limited to only groups of people. Like again, like with like when the shows come up and like that, because it will be open to the public, that's a different thing, and like I don't see a problem with that. But
well, I see it. Even though they're like club t-shirts, I think, do you guys wear your t-shirts at performances?
yes.
Yeah, so it's like kind of funding like costumes like we would for theater orgs in a way, because that's what they wear. I think you guys compete at other schools too and wear them.
Yeah, and we wear it for auditions and stuff. It's more so for that than just wearing it for the sake of wearing it.
Like every club only buys clubs for their members because that's who is gonna wear the t-shirts presumably. So I don't really see it as that much of a problem. If they had dues and were able to pay for it with their own money and were coming to us, I would see that as different, but I think it's fun to have fun t-shirts.
Justin?
I don't think it's smart to get into the business of micromanaging what limited funding means. So micromanaging why they're limited funding and looking at those details, because that's a very dangerous road to go down. They either are or they're not limited funding, and I think you leave it at that, not why they're limited funding.
So like
That's my
making
2
the
cents.
distinction between like whether they pay dues or not should not be
Right. I don't think that should be something you're considering, because that's micromanaging even more why they're limited funding, which you either are limited funding or you're not. You can't.
there's not like
You can't mold what limited funding means, if that makes sense. So like, oh, the group 1 is limited funding for these reasons, so I'd rather fund them because this group is limited funding for these reasons. So they're all in one lump. You can't be splitting them into subsections.
Is it that we can't or that we shouldn't?
You shouldn't.
It leaves you open for bias then too, because like if you're gonna fund this and then another limited funding group comes and you justify based upon how you see fit, based upon their status of limited funding, that's exactly what Tori says.
You also don't have it broken down into subsections like that in any bylaws or any budgetary statutes or any student org guidelines. It's just limited funding or not limited funding, and that's what this means. Not if you're limited funding because of this, you have these rights, or if you're not limited funding because of that, you have those rights. It's budget rights, limited funding rights, and that's as far down as the
Let's
funnel goes.
quickly hear from Justin, at least Dave and Michael. I know conversations start to get circular, but consider that this is an issue that will set a precedent moving forward. I'd like to hear from every representative first.
So I think I would probably be hesitant against funding for just any limited funding organizations just because of like the reasons that they are limited funding. I just don't think it's sufficient to say, well, because Finnace Board did it in the past and we should do it now. Bad policies in the past shouldn't be upheld in the future. I think this is something where it's like this, where we have to like set like a definite precedent about how we orgs that are either exclusive or do make members pay dues like all together, not just like singling them out individually. So I would probably vote against this.
Please.
I would also vote against it, just with the whole thing of even though we have been like funding it for the past, I mean, I think the point that Candace brought up about it being
even though we are selling shirts for, like, technically are a member, but it's just still good to know that we're living on it. You can just go and show meeting and then you're a member, you get a shirt, but for this one, you have to go to auditions, call back, it's a formal process to get a shirt.
Yeah, I think most of the points that what you brought up in the discussion have already been brought up. I was kind of just thinking the example that Tori spoke to about earlier was like a limited funding award, and then like you get a fraternity that would come in and like ask for T-shirts. Again, we don't have like any policies on like what it means to be like limited funding besides like they do have limited membership, so that makes it limited funding award. So I'd say probably looking over this request that I would probably vote against it just on those basis of the limited membership.
Yeah, I was very much on the fence about this. I was leaning towards funding at first. However, Tori Candace brought up a good point about how there isn't a special distinction between the funding organizations. So the board would be introducing bias if we were just fund one limited funding organization over another. And that's something I guess we would want to do as a finance board. So I would also vote against this.
At first, I was okay. Now we're introducing bias, where some limited organizations have the bodies are involved. You can see the profit.
Oh yeah, I think we definitely want to go with like, kind of, not to say that in a harsh way, like going forward was against it. But I was listening earlier, and I might be not paying attention, but it sounded like you guys had said that, you were denied funding last semester, but then came back and said again that you just didn't submit anything, so I was kind of confused for a second.
I can help you on that. So we actually, and that's a point I wanted to bring up that's separate from, I guess, the limited funding thing. We were denied funding for our concert, which has been like a long-standing tradition. And we had about $1,000 in our account, which took us years to save up. And then being denied funding for our concert for the first time meant that we had to spend all of that at once. So now we have about $200 in our account. And so if we buy T-shirts for our few, like our 12 new members, we're gonna have like $50 in our account.
We didn't request funding for T-shirts last semester because we figured people would get any.
Yeah, because you said we're already denied for our concert.
And just for Taylor, for your knowledge, the denial last year had nothing to do with like what it was, is finance board out of money. So just so that's clear for anyone that wasn't here last year.
Have you submitted a budget for the spring semester?
Yeah, but we didn't include T-shirts in this one or the one for fall since we were told we could get it through this avenue.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we were also, I guess, we'd be wondering what other avenue could we pursue for T-shirts if this is an option, since we don't have any money.
Yeah. So we'll see what the board decides, but should the board vote no, there are alternative methods for fundraising that we could help out with. We're going to try to gather more ways, see which one is more successful, average amounts. I think Zane's been working on that, correct? Him and his team have been working on that, so hopefully they'll be able to help you out too.
If I'm allowed to.
Yeah.
You mentioned dog collar earlier. They're also an audition-based thing. Did they get T-shirts?
They're, based on what they've told me as someone who is one of their advisors, their old constitution stated they were limited funding because they were religious based only, and they said that's not how they, based on their conversation we had with them last year, that's not how they are anymore. So based on what they've said in their constitution and with us, they are not, or they do something where it's like audition specifically for a performance but not for membership. But based on their conversations with us, they are not limited funding based on their constitution, but if they are doing auditions, that would make them, and that is a one-on-one matter that doesn't need to be brought up, I guess, you know what I mean, at this point. But based on our records, they're not limited funding.
Okay.
Are there any other new discussion points regarding the Scalaus at this time? there anything else you guys would like to address to the board or things that you've heard that you want to ask?
So, if I can have a new point.
Scott, go ahead.
So within Article 4 of budgetary policy, an organization with restricted funding status may only receive funds for the purpose of holding events which are intended for and open to all UMBC undergraduate students and for purposes directly in support of these events. If the organization collects dues, it must report this revenue to the finance board when requesting funds. So I think that we are able to take dues into consideration and that would not introduce bias against certain limited funding organizations. And as Stilettos doesn't have any other revenue sources basically outside of fundraising like normal student organizations, I think that they should have equal priority to the marketing and merchandise fund from the finance board.
Justin, you have something you want to say, and then I have something I'd like to add.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to ask, so how was it that you saved up for $1,000? You charge for performances?
No, the performances are free. We have a GoFunding fundraiser and had donations from like parents or other people.
Most of it has been fundraising, like the $1,000 that was in our account. That's been over like the course of years, from long before we were even in the group. It was saved up.
Yeah, something I'd just like to point out for 4.5.1, which does add that they can receive SGA funding for their purchases directly in support of these events. So considering that these shirts are basically the uniforms that they wear during their performances during off campus, it is still technically an option. But again, it's your guys' vote.
I think you're splitting hairs there, but okay. I think you're trying to logic your way out of it or into it. I think that's an argument trying to find a way to give to them when you know you probably shouldn't. But vote, so.
Well, good job, Susan.
My advice would be to
I'd
not.
like to move that discussion.
All right, there's a second. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All right. With that being said, is there a motion for regarding FBL 114-1920?
Move to approve FBL 114?
Yeah, so this would be 114 for the amount of $150.
FBL 114-1920 for the amount of $150.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion is denied. Alright. So, sorry, it looks like we'll put a pass legislation regarding Sahas today. But thank you guys so much for coming in for the situation. Zane, would you mind walking out and probably explain alternative methods to all they can regain some of the money that they've lost? Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming on. Sorry about that.
Also, welcome to everybody too. I really.
Thank you, Elsa. Yeah, so this legislation dies. No, remain, so remain as houses, and then the thing would be listed as, it'll forever remain on the legislature track as in progress. So we're going to move on. Is anyone here from the Free Optometry Society? Actually, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda. Since Philosopher's Anonymous is here and we're running behind the schedule, I'd like to push their request to be heard prior. That way we can get them accurate so they're not sitting here for 2 more requests they don't have to be here for. Right. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. And we're going to open up FBL 117-1920. So this is F50.
I'm just concerned because
That name looks kind of familiar.
Yeah.
there's lots of like dollars like they.
Alright, so they are requesting club t-shirts. We don't have the image. These are their lovely t-shirts for UBC Philosophers Anonymous, featuring 3 philosophers who are all anonymous. And then they're requesting for $25 We're up for 2 guys, so if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and actually we'll go around and do introductions for you as well. We should feel like that. So my name is Liam Kim. I'm the chair of the finance board currently. I am a voting member and I use she/her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Michael Chapman. I'm the finance board representative. I'm also.
Hi, I'm Taylor Jenny. I'm with the first year master's program, and I'm not voting.
Hi, I'm Manuela Otsuda. I am also at the finance, and I use she. I'm not a voting member.
Hi, I'm Liz Troy. I'm a finance board representative and I'm a voting member, and I usually
Hello, my name is Justin Connor. I'm a finance board vice chair. I'm a voting member. And I use he and pronouns.
I'm Hamid Khalid, I'm a finance board rep and a voting member as well.
Hi, I'm Sarah B. I'm a first year master as well, not a voting member, and I use she and her.
Hi, I'm Sahara. I'm part of that YA program. I use she and her, and I'm not a voting member.
Alex, I don't vote.
Hi, I'm Nithya Prakash. I'm a finance board representative. I use she pronouns.
I'm Courtney Campbell. I'm on the finance board advisors. I'm also coordinator for the board. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm like, I don't know. There we go.
Candace Martinez-Doe, Assistant Director for Leadership and Governance. I also serve as the SGA advisor, she and pronouns. I am a non-voting member.
I'm Tori Beasley, coordinator for student organization engagement, finance board advisor, she/her pronouns. I do not vote. I cover everything.
Yes. Hi, I'm Brenda. I'm the president of SGA. I use she/her pronouns and I don't vote.
Hi, I'm Francis. I'm the executive vice president of SGA and I do not vote.
Scott Buchanan, treasurer, he, him, I'm voting.
Dean Green, secretary for finance board. I use he and pronouns and I'm not voting on that.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. That was really nice. Alex, he and pronouns. I am an adult learner, as they say, and this is I basically took the year off of work so I could participate in club life, which has been really great. I am the co-president of Philosophers Anonymous, and it's a great club. This year, we have expanded our talks. We've been pulling in more people from the campus and trying to get a little bit more publicity and open the forum to people who aren't necessarily within our program. The program is very small. I'm pretty sure it's one of the smallest on campus. It has about 104 majors. So it's great for the department. I would argue strongly that it's great for the school. Philosophy is really important, and philosophy departments all over the country are shrinking. You might know. And the club itself discusses a wide range of topics, as philosophy applies to just about everything. So we have a lot of lively discussions. The criteria for being a member is attending a single meeting. And as I said, we've expanded and we have quite a few more people attending this year than we had in years past. We've been at a steady 15 people. It's a fairly small room, but having 15 people in the room talking about philosophy has been a really great experience for the club. I'm not sure what else would be pertinent.
You are good. Two members who will be waiting until they get back before we open discussion is Zane Poffenberger. He's our vice president for student organizations, and he is a voting member. And Ilse Marcus, the finance representative, she's also a voting member. But they're strong stuff like that. So if you just want to talk more about your request for t-shirts and how you came to your signs and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Basics on the t-shirt request, because that's what the board's going to be voting about.
Right, sure. So the t-shirts, as you said, it's under the threshold for request. We took down names for people who wanted to order a shirt. We decided on the motif here based on a vote. We made sure that all of the majors got a vote, and I'm sure, I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure that everyone who actually ordered a shirt actually voted. So it's a very, very democratic process.
Does anyone have any questions for the organization?
So you said you have about 15 study members in the organization?
Yeah.
In the order of 25, so it's the
10 extra, because you're anticipating numbers, or when you just have this amount to?
Right, so we took, I believe our vice president took names at 2 separate meetings for people who wanted shirts. And I imagine he took names like outside of meetings as well. Strictly people who have attended, but just making sure that everyone got a chance to order a shirt. Yeah.
We added professors. They've been past times when we requested shirts, we've asked professors if they wanted some, and as Alex was saying, even though 15 people show up regularly, there are people on the list who show up when they want to, who also wanted shirts. So all 25 people are people we know and come to. They're not like nobody, so to speak.
Alright, Nithya and then Justin, let's go.
Are all the meetings open to, I guess, people from all ages, or is it strictly for?
Open to all people, yes.
How many other people have to, I guess, the amount of shirts they are requesting for, of how many of them are back?
Do you have it? I don't know.
It's like such a fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many other people, I guess, in the number that they requested, like the amount of people, how many are back?
Oh. So that was like gonna be my question about like packaging a shirt, like, is that allowable? You're gonna have some disappointed people back at the party.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, SJ fund first, for undergraduate
Just say it.
students. Yeah, for undergraduate students, because that's what SGA, that's what our body's doing,
So we ordered shirts last fall. It wasn't 2 faculty members, right? But we gave the extras to faculty members. Is that also acceptable?
And as long as you're not potentially buying for them, and it just happens to be an extra that a faculty member picks up, I think it's okay, but I'm gonna default to the advisor's court in this.
Yeah, do you have, how many shirts are 25? You got 25 students? Are you
Yes.
trying to give these shirts to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, you can have extras, but it can only be given to students. They can ship in like $9 if they want it.
Yeah, so you could increase your request to like 30 items, we'd only fund for 25, and then if a faculty member decided to drop $9.04, they could theoretically get one, it just can't be SGA funds that pay for those.
And you can't sell the ones that we buy.
Right.
So does that mean that we could get approval as long as we're not actually giving these to professors?
Yes.
Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah, or if
I'm
you
trying to get
like-
that information for you guys.
If you wanted to increase your volume, so say you buy 25, but if there were like 2 professors that wanted, you could up to 27, you would only fund for that 25, and then as long as professors just paid the at cost amount, you can make a profit off that and have to be exactly $9.04 that they pay. But theoretically, they could still get shirts, it's just we can't, the SGA funds can't be used to get those professor shirts. But there's nothing stopping you from using care funds or whatever, I believe. Any other questions for the organization? Alright, with this, we're gonna go ahead and move into a period of discussion. During discussion, only finance representatives can talk amongst each other. But again, if you hear anything you feel is out of place or something you want to address, you'll be given an opportunity to do so at the end. You're in a weird position because you're a member of the club, but as an ex-officio member, you still also have talking rights during this period, so.
I apologize, I know I'm breaking. I just got the text back. There were 2 ordered for professors, so I would just make sure that those don't go to the professors.
Alright.
Okay, thank you.
We'll take your word on it. Alright, we're open to discussion. Does anyone want to start?
Does the UMBC logo fit in with the brand that?
Can we do that?
Let me
look.
I believe it does, because it's not a riff off the main logo, but it might be a riff on one of the side logos. So I have to check on that. Any other discussion points? Personally, I think it's a pretty cool shirt. As long as the UMBC board is within branding guidelines, I have no issues with funding this as is. I think the professors, they gave us a bit of a jump, but I think now that they know, I don't see them breaking that rule anytime soon, and I mean, they're doing it for a good cause, so. What was good? And no sugar before? Shirts. Any other discussion? Alright, there's a move to the question, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. I'd like to introduce FBL 117-1920, approve the Philosophers Anonymous's fall 2019 secondary ad hoc allocations request, which will amount of 226. 226 dollars. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve FDL 117.
Alright, would anyone like to register an extension at this time? You do not have to abstain for that reason. This would only be if anyone is a member or intends to get a shirt. Alright, all in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? 8-4, 0 against, 1 abstaining, none present. The motion carries.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Good. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for coming and talking before. Scott's going to walk you out. He's going to explain the process of going to SGA and actually getting the shirt.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming. Alright, I'd like to move to amend the agenda yet again. I know we're running a bit behind on Saha's requests due to the extraneous stuff we had at the beginning, but Caleb Cagle is here, who is our nominee for election board, and considering that they have passed at 7, I'd like to proceed with their confirmation before we continue on with Saha's requests. Are there any objections? Alright, with that, we're going to pass this on consent. I'd like to introduce JL 05-1920, which is the confirmation of Caleb Cagle as the election board chair. I'm going to turn the floor over to Verena so she can explain the role of the election board, what the election board chair does, and why she's in it.
Hello, again. So the election board is the other judicial body in SGA, and their primary responsibility is to plan and administer the SGA elections in April, as well as, again, mediate candidate stuff, like if they're doing something wrong, they set the election rules and all that stuff. So the election board chair is a stipended position. They make $988 for the year. And their responsibility is, again, to lead that whole planning of the elections, to come up with strategies to get more people to vote, to get more people to run, stuff like that. And so last year, the election board chair was involved in setting up like physical polling stations and working with administrators to actually get students in the voting thing on my UMBC, like all that stuff. And the chair works really closely with Candace throughout the year, which is great. So the election board chair also joins nominating committee, which is that group I mentioned that chooses election board members and appeals board members, to then choose the election board, like the rest of election board, if that makes sense. So they will be partially responsible for that as well. I think that's it.
Alright. Caleb, if you want to just give a quick introduction of yourself, while you're here.
Hi guys, my name is Caleb Cagle. I'm the new SGA election board chairman. That being said, new to the position, junior information systems, any of that good, all that good stuff that you know you have to do for introductions. I would say that this is the first time really getting involved in anything student government ever. Like I didn't really do it in high school or anything like that. Didn't really have an interest in it, and I think that should probably change, which is why I really heavily pursued this position once it was brought to my attention that I might be a decent candidate for it, and so I'm looking forward to the spring semester.
Alright. We're just going to go around with a quick round of introductions. Sorry I've done it before, but I'd like to just at least identify the voting members so you know who's going to be voting on you. But if you want to go ahead and start, we'll go on this one.
I'm Taylor. I was the Christian Master's program. I'm a non-voting member. I'm Nicole Trinidad. I'm also a Christian Master. I usually
Hi, it's Troy. I'm French. I'm representative from the Studies for the UCS. Hi, I'm Elsamir. I'm a finance program. I usually the pronouns and I'm a voting member.
I'm Mohammed Khalid. I'm a finance board rep and a voting member as well.
Hi, I'm Sierra. I'm also a first year ambassador, so I'm not a voting member. I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Sahar. I'm part of that athletic program. I don't vote and I use she and her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Nitya Prakash. the finance board representative. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a voting member.
Hi, I'm Courtney. I'm a finance board rep. She, her pronouns. Finance board advisor as well. I don't vote. I'm a coordinator for this one.
Candace Martinez-Jones, Assistant Director for Leadership and Governance. I also serve as the SGA advisor. She, her pronouns, and I do not vote.
Tori Beasley, coordinator for student organizations. She, her pronouns. Finance board advisor. I do not vote.
Thank you. Brenda, SGA president. She, her pronouns, and I don't vote.
Hi, I'm Francis. I'm the executive vice president and do not vote.
Dean SGA treasurer, DM, I'm voting.
Dean Green, secretary for finance board. I use he and pronouns and I am a copy.
My name is Liam Kim. I'm the current chair of the finance board. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a voting member.
I'm Michael Chapman, finance board representative. I use he and pronouns and I am a voting member.
Hey, I'm Jake Hoffberger. I'm vice president of the organization. He and pronouns and I'm a voting member.
Justin Condon, quick intro. Quick intro.
Oh, Justin Connor, vice chair of finance board, I'm a voting member.
So you already kind of explained why you're in the position. So we're going to go ahead and open up to questions. Does anyone have any questions for Caleb at this time regarding position of election board chair, qualifications, ideas, questions, anything that you think is necessary to know before you confirm him to this position?
So given your lack of experience in DSG in the past, how do you plan to overcome that learning experience about the whole election board and managing it? Because it seems like a very big responsibility.
I feel like I did have some really minor experience with it when I was in Tri-M in high school, so they did a lot of the same, protocols for how to move positions and everything like that for foreign imposed. And they tried to keep it formal, but how high school can be. So I feel like for the most part, a lot of it is hitting the ground running and just kind of taking it in stride, messing up here and there, and slowly just learning it, gain more experience, I'd say, for the most part. Granted, if there's something else that you think might be good supplementary material for me to look at, you're welcome to send it to me at my email. If you'd like that, I'm always open to learning a little bit more.
Does anyone else have any questions? Go ahead.
Do you have any other experience either being a leader or living a leadership role?
Yeah, so I'm a career facilitator on campus, that's how I know Kristen. And then I also got picked up for the leadership career facilitator, and that's how I know Candace, who then nominated me for this position. Beyond that, I also work at parking services. I might have dealt with some of you guys over the summer. Yeah, I know. So I do that. I've also worked as a part-time sales rep, and part of that is team lead for different sales that we do, going on 4 years. So a lot of different things I've just kind of picked up here and there, I'd say, for the most part. Never plan for running for an elected position in SGA? I'm sorry, what? Do you plan on ever running for an elected position within SGA?
Why not?
Why not?
I'm just curious.
Mainly because I just didn't know about it. I feel like it's a little bit too late, and also it would become a conflict of interest in the position should I choose to possibly see if I could do it again next year, because I'm only a junior. That being said, I know this is by the same person twice in a row, but you never know. Maybe I'll do a good enough job.
My final question I have for you, well, anyone else has questions, so maybe not final. But what do you intend to do to kind of help raise voter turnout? We've been on a steady increase for the past 2 years, but how do you intend to keep that trend going?
Yeah, so I said a lot of the same stuff that I did yesterday, so I'll reiterate that real quick for anybody that wasn't there. A great idea that was brought up by one of my colleagues that was also running for this position was go and you do your normal voting for the electoral, for the actual, United States presidency. You get a little sticker, right? Everyone loves stickers. I see it on a lot of people's laptops. So I think that's a really quick, easy way to give an incentive to go and vote that shouldn't dip too much in the budget. I had a great idea when I was driving home. At least I think it's a great idea, which would be, poli-sci majors here. That's a big focus for them, right? Why don't we start reaching out to some of the professors and just being like, hey, would you consider offering 1 extra credit point overall? Not a huge percent. Or maybe 1 extra credit point on a test, something like that to incentivize those students who are probably already interested, probably already voting, to go and do it anyways. I know it's somewhat not in the same vein. Maybe it might increase turnout, but also at the same time not do what we would intend to. But I think that might be a decent idea, but I'm also open to God's feelings, opinions.
I mean, as election board chair, that'll be your decision. I was just curious to see if you kind of had plans in the mix or if you were just going kind of blind.
I'm going into it, I'd say, probably relatively blind for the most part. I have a couple ideas, like I said, bring just those two that I've spoken about. The other ones I'm still kind of formulating the logistics of, but I think those ones are a lot more fleshed out in my head. I don't want to bring up anything that I don't think would work as of right now. But I've yet to meet with Candace or any of the other people for the roles for the following years.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions for Caleb at this time? All right. With that being said, I'd like to move into discussion. During discussion period, only Finnace board representatives and ex officio members and employees can kind of talk and discuss amongst themselves. But if you hear anything that you feel like your words have been construed as out of place or something that catches your eye or you're here in the situation that you don't agree with, just make a note of it and you'll be given an opportunity at the end of the discussion to address any concerns that you've heard. With that being said, we're moving into a period of discussion. Does anyone like to start in terms of Caleb? Michael?
The nominating committee was going through the process of, I guess, reviewing applicants for the position of the election board a couple of weeks ago. There were 2 people who did apply for this position, and of the 2, the nominating committee did decide to pick Caleb, which I guess everyone knows already. But anyway, I was one of the people who did vote in terms of putting Caleb for election board, and part of the reason I voted in such a way was because of the fact I feel he has a lot of optimism for the position as election board chair. As you can see, as he's driving home, he's thinking about different ways he can improve SGA elections, which I think is a very crucial part of the job as the election board chair. So for me, I would not be against voting to have him put on as the election board chair, because I definitely do love his optimism, and I think it would definitely be an asset in helping increase voter turnout in SGA elections. The only thing I would encourage Caleb to do is definitely speak to the advisors, talk to them, listen to their guidance and stuff, because you are starting off as the kind of disadvantage of not knowing different things. But I definitely do love the optimism, and I would encourage you to keep it up throughout the spring semester.
Any other discussion points? Scott?
What's the stipend for election? You guys want to make sure you can choose the right person because they're not subject to SRC. 19 cents like the person last
Any other discussion points? All right. With that being said, I'd like to move previous question and debate. All in favor? All opposed? All right. Good. All right. With that being said, is there a motion on the floor? Do you have anything you'd like to say in address? All right. With that being said, is there a motion on the floor concerning JL 05?
Move to approve JL 05-1920.
Would anyone like to register a dissension at this time? All right. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? All right. 8-4, 0 against, 1 abstaining, 1 not present, and the motion carries. Congratulations. You have 2 things to do before you go. Yeah. First, I have to give you an oath of office. Okay. And then you're going to go talk to Candace about getting your money. Okay. Unless you don't want to. So raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Caleb Daigle,
do solemnly affirm.
do solemnly affirm
That I will faithfully execute.
that I will faithfully execute
The office of SGA Election Board Chair.
the office of SGA Election Board Chair
And will, of the UMBC Student Government Association.
of the UMBC Student Government Association,
And will, to the best of my ability.
and will, to the best of my ability,
Promote and defend.
the
interest and well-being.
the interest and well-being
Of UMBC's undergraduate students.
of UMBC's undergraduate students.
Congratulations. Alright, we're going to scroll back up a little bit, and so no one here is from pre-optometry, just making sure.
612.
Alright, you can open up pre-optometry societies for you. Thank you so much for coming. space here, but in the interest of following what we did before, I'm still gonna open up this hospital for us to take a look at it. Is everyone okay with that? Alright, so there was, sorry. Pre-optometry society.
Thank you.
Alright, see ya. So they're asking for $300 in club t-shirts, if you wanna hold the supporting documentation. So I believe this isn't approved, this is the direct logo, but Candace can confirm.
I can see. That's gonna be approved.
Nope.
No. Cause it is, yeah, cause it is a variation of an actual logo.
I thought that was the actual one.
No, that has a thing on the eye.
Oh, I didn't
See that? So it's got like something on the eye, like a spectacle. Yeah.
Oh, I
So
see.
that would be, that would get, so who's it, this is from Custom Ink. Custom Ink would send this to UMBC. UMBC would reject that logo. It goes through licensing, so that they would be able to get something, even if you give them money for it.
My bad, I did not see the little scope on that dog.
Attention to detail.
Yeah.
You know what?
This is why we need the pre-optometry society. That being said, I'd like to move to table FAL 114-1920 until further notice.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Alright. Sorry about that, guys. Should have been paying more attention. We're gonna quickly move on to the Hellenic Student Association. Hellenic Student Association. It's 48. They are also requesting for t-shirts. Yeah, looking for t-shirts, price and custom ink, one open the image. Looking for 30 shirts at $9.11 each, which is the standard. I believe this is an authorized use.
Yeah, that's not the UMBC logo or variation of that, so.
So this is what they're requesting for the total of, I want to say, $273.30. Oh, look, it is right there. So yeah, this is what they're requesting for the t-shirts. Like to open discussion on that?
Could we go back to the application?
Oh yeah, if you could return to that.
Can you go up to the description? This is called t-shirts.
Yeah, right there.
That's fine.
So I'd like to open discussion concerning HSA shirts request. Anyone like to go first?
To me, it seems pretty basic. And this says that there's no issue with branding, so that doesn't seem to be a concern. $9.11 is under our $10 precedent, and there's 30 shirts, so everything seems to be in good order. I say we should approve.
Any other points of discussion? Shirts. I'll move previous question to end debate.
Second.
All in favor? Alright. That being said, if you want to open up 115. 116. Alright, I'd like to introduce FBL 116-1920, approval of the Hellenic Student HSA's Fall 2019 Secondary APOC allocations request for the total amount of $273.30. Yeah. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve FAL 116-20.
Would anyone like to register an abstention? Alright, all in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? 84, 0 against. Motion carries. I think we have one final Sahas request, and then we can get into the bread and butter of today. So this is going to be 118, which is ASCOM, which is the Asian Studies Council of Majors. They're requesting funds for a t-shirt request. They're requesting 34 t-shirts at $8.79 each for a total of $298.86. And I believe it is an improved use of our logo. So. Any discussion points?
For organizations that are council of majors, are those like restricted by major? No.
Anyone can join.
Yes.
Huh?
Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I just made a weird noise.
Any discussion points regarding ASCON's request? Is everyone kind of good with that?
Just move to strike the 34 items to 30 because it's only fun amounts of 30 shirts.
No, to $300.
Okay, then never mind. I take that back.
Any other discussion points? All right. I'd like to introduce FDL 117-1920. Approval of the Asian Studies Council of Majors Fall 2019 Secondary Ad Hoc Request for the total amount of $298.86. You have to check that. Yeah, $298.86. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve FBO 118-1920. Second.
I'm going to register abstention due to very close personal ties with basically their entire e-board. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? 8 for, 0 against, 1 abstention, 0 not present. The motion carries. We're done with the house request, guys. For now.
Are you back on schedule?
Yes.
No? Yes?
Well, we haven't.
So there's a discussion that was supposed to be occurring during any of the points that we had, which we haven't had. But we can go with that discussion now while we wait for the final confirmation to arrive. I think Alex gets out of class soon, so she'll be hightailing it over here. But
This discussion, what's that email?
yeah, discussion for clubs without advisor approval and all that stuff. So there were several clubs that kind of came to us that was mentioned earlier during the meeting about like their advisors didn't sign off, they didn't realize they needed advisor approval to get their form signed off, and thus the requests weren't put in time because of that. So there's just debate on what to do with that. But Scott, if you want to kind of introduce that too when we brought it up.
Basically the same stuff I said at the beginning. What do you guys want to do with people getting certain parts done while getting advisor approval?
I mean, so is this, because like, was there anything about advisor approval in any of the treasurer trainings, like that was mentioned?
It's a required part of the application.
Because
it's included in the guidance, I believe.
it sounds like a lot of them didn't know, but if it's like they did this like last minute Thursday night or Friday morning, then it still seems like it's on the behest of the club as opposed to if you did it early and your advice was just not doing it, then like that would be different. So I think it's like, I'm not sure.
Zane? You're good. Just want to make sure I know a couple clubs that came to the SGA office on Friday, like explaining their situations. I know School Club did that, but apparently they also got a verbal approval because their professor, according to the club, doesn't really own a computer or use it. So they had they just had the advisor and Tori like on a phone call. They're like, he gave them approval for that. But I think Bethel was another club that did that. So also, do you want to talk more about that since they came to you?
Yeah, I mean, Dan and I were in the office and they came in and they said that, that they did they say that they didn't know? All I know is that they were like, we like tried to submit it and they were done their application by like 9 p.m. Friday, but their advisor hadn't approved it, so they weren't able to submit it. But I don't
remember if they said they didn't know or their advisor hadn't signed off in time.
Yeah, but I mean, like, they were completing their application at Friday 9 p.m. So, like, even if, I guess if their advisor from that point on didn't know, then.
How many clubs didn't have the advisors approval club?
15.
So were you able to submit?
Nope.
So how did you know? How did you know that there were 15 clubs?
Because SurveyMonkey like saves once you start an application,
Oh, it's
it creates
okay.
a number for it. So you can see where they were in progress.
That's why some requests jump around so much. It feels like we're going to a high number to a low number. Because once you start making an app, it's logged. So we can see who got up to every stage but advisor.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's why we pay $5 for this. Elise, then India.
So there might be an assumption, but like I understand how some folks probably looking through the application the last minute. I feel like those are the folks that might be ones that didn't reach out like earlier to say, oh, not like why is it the wrong one? And have like a reason for it and came to the office. With the ones that came in. I don't know. Sorry.
I think it's a dog. I just don't know how we track that. We're starting to India.
I received an email Saturday morning saying from, I think it's someone from Students for Life, about how they did receive, advisory approval, but they didn't realize that they had to submit the application afterwards. So they emailed, asked me if there's any way to still accept the application.
Which one?
Sunday, Students for Life.
Yeah, so there are a handful of, so Finnace and I just were going through all of them, that's what we've been doing over here, because we realized that all of those are also in the Excel sheet, like that aren't submitted. So we're going through and just looking at them, there's a handful that the advisor form was either not even started, or ones, like you just said, they're signed, they were just never submitted. So, timestamps on them for when they were, the advisor went to it, but they never went back in to submit it, so that was a conversation amongst yourselves.
Yeah, read receipts and everything. Mohammed and then Justin.
Just to confirm, are you talking about that 9 thing right now, or are you talking about something different after, before that?
It's 5, 7, and 9 are kind of all the same thing. They're just split
I want to
up.
talk about CSC and the reason why they were.
Oh, yeah, if you'd like to go ahead with
Yeah, so they sent an email, and I just want to read the email out. So they said, I'm the president of CSP, and while I was filling out the budget request to our treasurer account, the website said error, deleted everything I put in the server. So they're kind of like, and they go on and saying that site literally crashed and deleted everything. So you have to keep that in mind, because some clubs are claiming that there were some technical difficulties with the site.
Has any other club experienced this?
I didn't see anything else coming about that. Let me look at CSC's. Because it's like the SurveyMonkey automatically saves.
They said the site literally crashed and deleted everything I put in there right before the deadline.
That's very convenient.
Yeah.
Weren't there also clubs that came in with like the paper form?
For the advisor?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so is that in the 15 count or?
No. So one club I worked with, they had paper form, and we scanned it up into the application, and then I was able to bypass the signature part. But like we can look to see if they're in the ones that weren't completed, if they scanned in the paper form, then I suppose you could move them through the process. Yeah.
Justin.
So, are we still talking about the advisory approvals, or are we just like?
This would be, I think that's one where any issues that clubs had in budget submission that wasn't of their own report. So either advisors, issues with the websites, stuff like that. Granted, I'm not really having to give, or like jumping to give leniency to any club that's like, stuff got deleted, it's 11:58. You had several of those times. But yeah, this would be any issues with clubs that are having problems with their budgets.
So what were the problems with the 100 clubs not having PCSs that crashed?
They said that they're scratched. But as far as the other ones, Scott was on this, so if you could speak to those, specifically global debates and comments on the media and the site of this questions.
I don't have all that prepped right now, but medical brigades, they came to the workshop Friday. We went through basically their entire application, but they were unable to get an an advisory signature before then. I can bring up the email from all the other ones, but I think most of the other ones were forwarded liaison emails, so if you guys want to speak to that, or what they said. Because I basically gave a standard response that has to be brought up at the board.
Anyone have comments on the media? Justin, go ahead.
Oh, I don't have any comments on
No, just about whatever you're going to say.
I mean, some situations like that where like they come in like the day that it's due or such, and like then they like try and get advice from people, like how much on the behest of the advisor is it? Because it's like if the advisor's just told that day like, look, we need your approval, it's like, are we gonna really say that it's the advisor's fault? Like, I understand skill organization's dilemma, but if it's done at such a last minute like that, like even if they had done it Monday of the week, I would say like, yeah, there's some leniency there. But if it's like 2 days a day before, on the day that it's like, how much grace are we giving them there?
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're deciding now as the board in terms of what we want to accept. And then eventually, this conversation is going to tail into clubs that did not get ECS fees because they couldn't meet the break time, which is again, any club that says they don't have ECS fees is going to be completely on the club at this point, considering how much break had sent out prior and how much it was advertised. I'm not giving any leeway for that in any way, shape, or form.
You also told ECS you wouldn't do any anyway, so.
Yeah, so we're following up on promises, but after seeing how much effort Britt really put into this and talking to her, Scott, you want to talk about comments?
So they sent an email to Mohammed, and she forwarded to me. They said that no programs showed on the site. I'm not sure if it's an issue of permissions or something of the sort, but their treasurer went to treasurer training.
Who is it?
The president.
Who's the treasurer?
Clark Jones.
So-
They attended 9/16/2019.
So Clark Jones logged in or the president logged in?
That was unclear, which I said your treasurer has access. They should have done it. They automatically closed at 11:59. They have not followed up since, so I don't know if it was the president trying to access the treasurer.
Well, I can tell you.
I honestly feel like we shouldn't get any grades for like any of these topics, but
I just,
I'd like to let her finish, please.
I just feel like a lot of these clubs, and even like the Fridays that got submitted, were all so like last minute. And it's not like we emailed them the last minute, like we've been emailing them like constantly and like asking to attend workshops. The fact that there's like all these problems and then reaching out at the last minute, it's just like there's no point of like trying to give grace to them when they know if they could have attended. Like I know for a fact the whole brigades, like they did everything the last minute because I never said Monday before or like last Monday, because Friday was due, and they said they didn't start it at all. So I mean
Rebuttal from Scott and Elsie.
I disagree on local brigades because they came to the workshop and put in effort even though they didn't get the advisor approval. I don't know if that's worth pulling up on if they actually went to things and tried to get it done correctly. A lot of people didn't start late, which is a little bit frustrating, but the media push was only early in the last 2 weeks, and Friday was when the workshop was promoted, so we called people in the room on the last day of the workshop.
Also, Michael.
Going back, like I like Justin asked the question of whether or not the advisor approval was like mentioned specifically at the treasury training. I know Scott, you said that like it was a mandatory part of the application, and so like that's something that sort of should have been on their radar. But at the same time, you could have started the application and then not known you needed advisor approval until you got to that point, and then asked them the day of. I mean, it's still technically like there could be clubs who did that like Friday morning and their advisor didn't get back to them. Like, is that on the students? Like, I know that it was last minute, but you could prepare for like hours of. I mean, like, we submit things on last day all the time, but it's like you have those in your head that you do have a few like hours of like I don't know safety.
Advisor approval is never specifically mentioned in the treasurer trainings. I honestly forgot about it, but it is a mandatory part of the form for them to submit. And them not submitting before the deadline shows that they didn't go through the whole form before then, so it's kind of up to interpretation. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on it, even though it is a required part, because I don't really agree with having advisor approval, but that's up for all of us to decide.
Just in general, more so some things, some symptoms I've noticed when I was helping some organizations that reminded some that weren't with their budgets. A lot of them didn't seem to know how much work they had to be going into trying to get the budgets done and submitted. I spoke to several organizations that when I was trying to walk them through the process and stuff, they were just completely taken aback by the level of work that had to be done about pre-planning for the events that they wanted to request money for and stuff like that. And I mean, Phil, either here nor there. I will say it is a lot of work, but I kind of do understand both sides of the argument that, you know, there was a lot of preparation on our part to try to prepare student works for this deadline. And then at the same time, I know how it is to be a student who's always trying to beat the clock, because that's me every day before my 8:30 trying. It's emotional, guys. So, and then something else I wanted to say was, I don't know, this is more to Candace. I believe Delta Sigma Theta Sorority sent me an email. They did submit their application on time. However, they left off the supporting documents. They did send it before the 12, sent me an email before the 12 o'clock deadline. Is that something I should?
That's for the board to decide. Like they sent you the documentation?
They sent me the documentation. It was just not attached to the application.
In regards to the second point there, I think I'm okay with accepting the documentation simply because the reason why we're doing things up here is that if we have questions, we can call clubs in. So I see no reason why a club can't send us like, hey, this is something we forgot to add on. But the bulk of their requests that they submitted on time, they just forgot one document that if we were looking through it and we had a question, they didn't have the right to bring in, or just they had the right to come to this meeting and drop that off. So I see no issue with that. But your points have been noted, Justin and Elsa.
So, when that like staff brought up like about the advisor approval, it seems to me that like I get clubs didn't understand how much work had to be done because this is a new system, but it's like at the same token, we did give them a lot more. We even had like 2 weeks of like treasure training specifically for spring semester held by Sky and his team for this. And so it's like we did try and do our best to like prepare them. So I feel like them saying, well, we didn't know how much work was gonna have to be done. It's like that's sort of like why we're trying to like invite them out and like to learn how much work you're gonna have to do. So plus I was saying like they didn't realize how much work. I'm not sure if that's sufficient.
Yeah.
Elsa.
Just one question. So if you were like submitting the application, you got to the advisor approval, you like gave the email for the advisor, you could still complete the rest of the application before the advisor came back and like approved it, right?
I believe advisor was the last step.
Okay, that's one of the last steps.
Okay. And then going back to like the point that Scott made in regards to like it wasn't mentioned in treasure training, like I'm more willing to give leniency on that specific issue. Like I know that like a week before budgets were due, like I texted Scott, like, because in the back of my head I remember that there was an off-campus like form that was used last year. I hadn't heard about it. I attended treasure training. I myself did not like know that it was going to be like streamlined through the application or there was going to be a printed doc. And so because I had questions regarding that, and then like Scott himself mentioned that it wasn't specifically mentioned treasure training. I'm just worried that like for a club that, okay, we get it, they should have done the application beforehand, but a club that's doing it in the last few days, it could very much be like they did everything they could and then their advisor didn't approve it. Like perhaps we can talk about like for those clubs like getting in like their paper documentation within the next 3 days or something like that. I wouldn't be as opposed to it because as Scott said, I don't think that it's the most pressing part of the application.
Candace and Justin.
So, 18 organizations were able to get their stuff done. 18 that were like partially submitted, so we cleaned it up. But for the total for off-campus events, the request is $164,000 now. Correct. Currently, without the 15 forms. That's
So it could be like a weeding out.
partially submitted. So the
$30,000
so the 15 requests that are incomplete are not included in the 164,000 for off-campus.
And in my opinion, if it is something you are considering as far as allowing other boards out of that 15, in my opinion, the only ones that should be able to kind of like be considered again are the ones that, because there are some in there that do have the signature on them from the advisors. No one just went back in to submit it. Those are the only ones I can understand bringing back into the finance board process. However, I do want to bring up, Scott, to your point that you don't think advisors should be signing off. I completely disagree because it's going to be a requirement for any group that wants to travel in the future. It's a liability thing. Advisors need to know where their students are. We need to know where students are. So it's in the future, soon-ish, it's going to be a non-negotiable.
Also, an advisor is like a mandated reporter on campus, and there's a liability associated when they sign off on like certain forms or like travel requests, like if they have to interact with the student organization. So they, to back up Tori's point, they should be getting into the habit of this sort of thing because of how much liability like there exists within their role of being a student work advisor on campus.
Any other discussion on this? Candace?
I just think if you introduce, if you start considering boards that weren't able to complete the process in time, you will end up funding orgs that were able to complete the process at less money, and they did everything right. Right? And so they will lose out if you open the door to other orgs who weren't able to complete the process. Because you know you don't have enough money to fund all of them. You just know.
Justin and Michael, but try and limit it to 2 points.
Okay, so the whole treasure training thing about not including advisor thing, I don't really think that's really on Scott's fault, simply because I think if organizations start the application at a reasonable time, like I said, even if it was the Monday of the week it was due, that's still like 4 days they have to like get that advisor's agreement. And so I don't think that it's the end all be all. If treasure training doesn't mention advisory approval, if you start at a reasonable time, you should be able to have time to get that advisor's approval.
Michael and Scott.
I was just curious to hear what the FYEs were saying, what you thought about the situation. I know we're all cynical on this board, so I would definitely love to hear some of your input on the situation.
We're going to do Scott and say that we'll go around to you guys. Is that okay? All right, Scott.
Treasure training didn't really go really in depth to the budget process either. That's more what the workshops are for, because treasure training encompasses more than just the budgets. It's also how to deal with SAPSC, ECS, and more things than that. So I don't think treasure training is really supposed to talk about that either. Moreover, we have precedent from the fall where we didn't consider requests that didn't have advisor approval.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring up the point that like in comparison to like how we used to do it, I think it's pretty similar like in terms of like when it was first come first basis, you still couldn't plan an event like last minute, like you still had to meet with BCS, you still had to submit like 30, 60, 90 days prior to the event. So I think this is just like obviously a more structured way of budgeting and like planning for events, but I mean in terms of leeway, like Tori said, the only ones you should really consider are people that like have the signature and like act like just didn't go back and submit it, because again, I don't think, I mean, it's new for student organizations to like submit an actual budget, but it's not new for like them to plan and like be prepared for events, because like and being on the finance board previously, like we've had events where they come and be like, or they'll like they were submit stuff to the finance board and it's like, yeah, it's like too late to ask for so much amount of money or something like that. So I think that only these should be given to like clubs that showed an effort in getting things in on time.
I also agree because since this is a fairly new system, we don't want to set a precedent where clubs are vicious and say it's okay for them to like submit it, not submit it on time and then have it just go weeks later, even though that may not be the case for every club that fails to come on time. But I think that the deadline should be like enforced much further.
I also agree. I feel that with the new system change and basically how the finance board work is being overhauled, as a club, you should be more aware and you should care more about what's happening at the higher level. So if you cared about the money that you were getting, that you would be on top of submitting these requests in earlier.
Yeah, I want to go off the same point. This is like a fairly new system, so like what precedents like you guys set now would like be the future of like what we decide for other future clubs, and so I feel like you should have like a fair precedent, and so that everyone gets you know what they need, and like the people that aren't like submitting on time, the people that are just delaying it, don't really come up with excuses like they said.
Even at the couple of meetings ago, they're like, okay, if things like clubs email us after the deadline, like we didn't say no. So we should follow through.
Before you go, I just want to do a quick straw poll. FY is included in terms of leniency versus non-leniency, just so we can see where people stand. That way, we don't fall into circular conversation. So, all in favor of giving any sort of leniency to clubs, please raise your hand now. And all in favor of giving no leniency at all to clubs, please raise your hand now.
That's why it's a vote.
No, I asked them.
Oh, you asked them to vote.
Yeah, but what's a straw poll? So I kind of just want to see where people stand, where they're. So there's no leniency club over here?
That is a no leniency.
Alright, Justin, your point.
So, with what Tori had to say, I think there should be like clubs that had everything in, like even the advisor's signature, but then just didn't know they had to go back and submit it. Maybe we can like not give them priority as if a club that did everything right, like, sort of like a tier. So all clubs that did everything right, like they get first consideration. They're like sort of what we're looking at, and then like clubs that like just didn't know they had to go back and extend it. Maybe we can like work something out. Like it's just like they just didn't go back and submit it.
Alright,
Yeah, I agree with Justin in that we should consider, or was that just forgot to estimate, that was the specific case that I was not about familiar with. I'm not sure about like tier system because I feel like that just overcomplicates the system that's been overlooking at everything and deciding how to fund them, and I don't know if like it's necessary to do something like that just for getting this submitted at the end. That's awesome.
Oh, by tier system, I'm just saying like all clubs that have done everything right, and then like the next is like all clubs that had their signature, they just didn't send it in like after. Like that's as simple as it is. Like that's
since we wanted to do confirmations prior, if Alex Johnson's not here the next 4 minutes, I'm gonna move to table her until next week. I know it's not ideal, but I would rather not interrupt the budgets with a confirmation person coming in, especially when emails sent out to them at a given time and they are almost 30 minutes late with no response. That kind of irks me a little bit, personally. But the second action item that I wanted to do was another straw poll in terms of allowing clubs that have all the forms in, just forgot to press submit after advisor approval, allowing them to be put back into the finance board's funding process. Regardless of a tier system or not, just the general idea of them being put back in. I wanted to get a quick vote on that, just to see where we stood on that. Because if we all agree on it, or the majority of us agree on it, it might be something worth not bringing up further conversations since we have an idea on that. So all in favor of allowing clubs that have their advisor forms in and they just forgot to go back in and click submit, allowing them to rejoin the finance board's allocation process, please raise your hands now. Alright, and all opposed? Alright, so that's kind of where we stand. For the opposing category, do you want to give a response, or just that like everyone else can hear your side and your point of view before we continue on making an official vote for this matter?
I think for me, I'm just that I'm like, you can ask questions and like, you can look through the budget to see exactly what you need. So like, if you're not sure about something, you can just reach out.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I'm interested in it. But that's fine.
There's Mohammed, and then we'll go to Michael and then Justin.
I kind of agree with that. So I think it kind of works like in our classes, right? Like if you can make a deadline, you communicate beforehand with the professor, and then you probably get exception and everything. But sometimes stuff like this happens. I mean, these are rules that we set up, and we have to set a precedent, so we have to stick by it. I feel like it's kind of similar to the discussions that we kind of had for the summer mistakes that we kind of did, and I was against that as well. So I think it's following the same line of thinking, understanding. I mean, the reasons why stuff happens at the same time. I mean, this is a set deadline that we set, and we every single day, the workshop will be held. So it's like I kind of find it hard to reconcile, why clubs would not submit it on time.
Michael.
Could Justin please?
Justin.
So I guess my question is like, when they're filling out the application, I don't know if Finnace or you know this, but and they have to send it to the advisor. Do they get a notification that the advisor signed off on it, that they have to go back in and submit it, or are they just supposed to go in?
Let me check.
I know that clubs that fully submitted it got an email saying thank you for submitting your request. So I believe any club in this situation would not have gotten any response back, like any confirmation that their request was submitted. So that could be something to think about.
My only thing was, Candace had kind of made a point that, I'm fully reconsidering all the organizations that have the advisor signatures, but just forgot to press submit. I'm fully for reconsidering. But something that does kind of bug me is Candace made a really good point that already we are really over budget for off-campus events. So by accepting, I believe, 3 organizations into this pot, we would be not significantly, but to some extent, we would be lowering the amount that all the orgs that did do everything correctly could be funded for. So with that being said, something that was kind of, I'm getting too good at this, something that I was kind of thinking of was maybe holding a secondary way of funding just the 3 orgs that maybe failed to submit. And I know this is going to be unpopular, but the reason I said that is because I don't think that it would be fair to penalize the orgs that did do everything right, but I think it would go to the benefit of helping the orgs that may have forgotten to submit without penalizing everyone else for the situation.
Alright, what about that idea? I'm gonna give mine real quick, but if anyone has anything they'd like to mention right off the bat.
I would be heavily against that idea. I find it deeply infuriating if I were to be completing an application and due to my own personal forgetfulness that I really just forgot to press the submit button on the application even though everything was finished on it. And so I just don't feel like in the same vein that if I had done everything right and then just forgot to press submit, go back on the application, press submit,
I just don't know if that necessarily warrants the application being treated as like not.
To your point though, if you had a test that you had to play or online homework, your professor probably would give you like partial credit but not full. They'd be like, we'll only look at it at 75% versus full if you look at it from like that light, because you still missed a deadline.
I think it's something different. Justin.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not even 100% sure if I'm on board with like just fully letting them back in without, you know, having some type of asterisk around it, because I think there is like that penalty for clubs that did do everything right and on time and like, so their funding is gonna have to be cut because we're considering them, which is why like I said, like I think there should be like some like something that distinguishes those that like did it all correctly and those that didn't. Or else just like they forgot to resubmit it. So I'm like not even sure if I would just say put them back in the pot like all the other people.
All right. No one have any other points? I'd like to. Well, first thing, I'd like to move the table of jail or state planning, which is the confirmation of Alex Johnson until next meeting.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries. Did they respond yet? Or still nothing? All right. The next thing I'd like to do is a formal vote in terms of whether or not we want to consider organizations that, you know, have everything in there, just forgot to click submit, just so we can start working and start moving towards change. Yes.
So that this precedent apply to off-campus and on-campus events?
I think this specific precedent will only apply to on-campus, only the advisory.
Wait, any on-campus have on a similar issue? So like what we discussed.
BGCS probably.
I think that's our question. Thank you guys so much for coming. So I'd like to move into a formal vote, unless anyone would like to bring a new point of discussion in terms of this.
I have a question.
Yes.
Michael, when you were talking about like a different process, were you referring to like allowing you to go through Sahas, or did you have like something specific in mind?
So what came to mind immediately when I said that was kind of what happened for Strong Youth Club. It was the process through Sahas. And my thinking towards that is, like I said, 18 clubs did get it right. And I mean, at the end of the day, regardless of whether I did everything right and just made that small mistake at the end of my test, and I took a 77%, because I'm really speaking about myself at this point. You know, it kind of still is my mistake, and I gotta still own up to it. So I mean, it's not, in my opinion, completely fair to penalize everyone who did do everything right, and kind of reward the people who, although they did make a mistake, likely made a mistake, they still did not do everything right. I think there should be still some type of repercussion for that, and I think having them go and request funds through the Sahas system is the best way to ensure that the club is getting recognized for the request, but they're not getting the same consideration as all the clubs who did do completely right.
Thank you. I feel like I figured that's kind of what you meant, but I wanted to make sure I knew and everyone else actually knew what your thought was.
All right. So is everyone okay with moving into a vote and determination of clubs that have everything in, just forgot to press submit, having some way of them getting funded, be that through the Sahas system, through Michael's idea, or just being put back in the regular pot? But just the general concept of those clubs being considered for funding at all. Is everyone okay with moving into a formal vote on how they want to proceed, or do you guys feel like we need more discussion on that? Scott?
I don't think Sahas would be appropriate just because off-campus events are usually more expensive and would disadvantage people who use the Sahas for more legitimate purposes. So I would just put them back into the regular consideration. I don't think the amount of requests in there should affect the decision, because it's just that who we're going to consider.
Any other comments before moving to a vote? All right. All in favor of allowing clubs that did everything except for the submission reorganization, which includes the advisor approval, all that's completed, just not the submission, being allowed to be considered for funding and not just immediately thrown out. Please raise your hands now.
Great question. So does that include organizations that completed the whole thing, but they were still waiting for advisor signatures?
No, this is just for ones that got the advice signature. They just have to go back and submit the application fully, but everything else was done on time. So all in favor of that, please raise your hand now. All right, all opposed? The motion carries. I'm sorry, guys.
If it makes you all feel any better, it's only 2 organizations. 3 requests total, 2 orgs.
We're off campus.
Yeah, there were, that got the signature.
That actually got the signature. So it's 2 ethics bowl requests and signed Students for Life.
Just out of curiosity, how much are those allocations for?
I can tell you if you
I'm
want to
not
see.
worried about the money, but
Join us, Steve.
ID.
Around 9,000.
9,000.
Move for a 10-minute recess.
Second.
Motion is accepted.
This is why we have Fridays too.
You're gonna love each other. You're gonna love each other.